This is Talkin to America. I'm your host, Aaron Zellman. Our subject is, when is the right time to shoot a person in self-defense? Our guest is Chuck Klein. Chuck is the author of 8 books and hundreds of articles, columns, and stories, many of which relate to or are about self-defense tactics. One of his most significant and widely distributed book is Klein's CCW Handbook, the requisite for those who carry concealed weapons. Chuck, how did this book come about?
As a gun writer, I was concerned that so much was being written about how to shoot, what to shoot, and just about everything else about shooting, except when to shoot.
So this book is about what to shoot and when to shoot.
Yes, but it's also about when not to shoot and the impact or ramifications of using lethal force. Just winning a gun battle doesn't necessarily mean you've won the war. There are worse things than dying. To some, it's spending the rest of their life in prison. And if you don't understand and comply with recognized use of force rules, jail time for you might be the final outcome of a shootout with a bad guy. In other words, just because some thug has or is about to commit a crime doesn't necessarily mean you have the right to use lethal force against him.
Chuck, you mentioned the use of force rules. What are these rules?
There are 5 criteria that must be met for the successful use of force.
Well, by successful, do you mean in addition to surviving the firefight?
Right. You, of course, must survive the firefight, which is where your training and equipment come in. But even before the shooting starts, you must not violate any of the 5 rules of engagement.
Well, Chuck, what are these rules and where can our listeners study them?
They, along with the details about when lethal force is forbidden, warning shots, shooting to wound, and dealing with the media, are in my handbook, which is available from Accurate Press. Their number is 1-800-374-4049. That's 1-800-374-4049. We'll get to some of the examples and specifics later.
Okay, well, tell our listeners why this book is important. Why would any decent law-abiding citizen want or need this book?
The importance of this book is to protect the decent law-abiding citizen who needs to carry a concealed firearm, protect him or herself or their family from not only criminal charges, but also from civil suits that usually result in any shooting. Anytime someone is injured, by any means, but especially by a firearm, the police and prosecutor will look at the incident with the intention of charging the survivor with a crime. In addition, the victim or his or her family will be retaining an attorney with the intention of bringing a civil suit against the other party, you, the survivor. In any court action, it's not who's right or wrong, but who can prove or disprove who's right or wrong. This book will prepare our fellow decent law-abiding citizens to survive the legalities of a lethal force incident. We are living in very dangerous times, with ever-increasing drug-dealing shootouts, gang warfare battles, disgruntled murderous employees, psychotic killers, stalkers and robbers with no feelings for human life, and politically motivated fanatics venting their rage with lethal force on a daily basis. Adding to this escalating violence is the multiplicity of super predators, or just plain bad guys that are now carrying guns. The proliferation of firearms in our social makeup has made being proficient at hand-to-hand defense tactics academic. Today, guns are the rule. And if you don't have one when one is needed, you're at a distinct disadvantage.
Okay, well, who's going to use this book? Is the book written for the end user, the guy who carries a gun, for protection, or is this something for lawyers?
Though I'm not a lawyer, I do have a Bachelor of Laws degrees, but I can't write legalese. The book, however, has been edited by a licensed practicing attorney, who's now a court magistrate, J. Stewart Newberry. He was kind enough to check over my statements, positions, and advice to make sure they were in line with sound legal practices. This book is written for and by the person who carries lethal force with him or her on a regular basis. Of course, there are many firearm training organizations that purchase the book in bulk for distribution to their students, but the book is available individually direct from the publisher, $5.95 post-paid. And again, that number is 1-800-374-4049.
Carrying a gun on a regular basis, one has to wonder, do you mean people like police officers?
No. Cops come under different rules than civilians. Police have a duty to intercede, to take action, to arrest perpetrators. This is written for the civilian who carries a gun for self-protection or protection of his family.
Well, everybody must be wondering at this point, Chuck, do you carry a gun?
I have, as a police officer, a private investigator, and as an ordinary citizen, carried a gun or had a gun close at hand for almost all of my adult life. I wouldn't be talking to you today if I hadn't had a gun with me on more than one occasion. When I went through the police academy a long time ago, one of the trainees asked the lieutenant in charge, should we carry a gun off duty? The lieutenant's answer made such good sense and was so succinct that not only have I lived that advice, but I have taught it to my students and included it in my writings. The lieutenant said, one either never carries or one always carries, but one never sometimes carries. There are, of course, exceptions to every rule. For example, if you always carry, you would not want to be packing when going out drinking alcoholic beverages with your buddies or visiting your child's school. On the other hand, if you never carry and, say, your ex says he or she is going to kill you the next time he or she sees you, it might not be prudent to go about your business unarmed. The danger in the last scenario is, if you don't normally carry, you might not be sufficiently trained in the use of lethal force when it comes about. In other words, there's a huge difference between someone saying they're going to kill you and actually making the attempt. The difference is measured not only in who lives or dies, but in who goes to jail or who is sued for wrongful action. This is what my book, Klein's CCW Handbook, the requisite for those who carry concealed weapons, is all about. Carrying lethal force on your person changes your persona. You will act and react differently when you have in the back of your mind that you are prepared to deal with deadly threats.
Chuck, you mentioned domestic violence, which is a real issue in America. The media, which tends to be very anti-gun, anti-self-defense, tout the potential victim should keep a cell phone handy and seek protective court orders to protect themselves. Do you support this mindset?
Sure. I think it's a good idea to have a cell phone and take advantage of court-issued protection methods. But paper tools or time-sensitive methods are of little or no value at the point of confrontation. A perpetrator who is in your face is not going to be deterred by a piece of paper.